She hid a dark secret to protect her son, but the truth always comes to light. A story of resilience and hope that will touch your heart. Welcome back. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy the story. The elegant facade of Riverside luxury apartments belied the struggles of those who lived within its walls. Among them was 45-year-old Felina, a woman whose dignified appearance masked years of sacrifice and deception. Every morning, she left her apartment dressed immaculately in corporate attire, kissing her 19-year-old son Harold goodbye with reassurances about her prestigious position as an executive assistant at a downtown financial firm. The reality, however, was starkly different. Felina worked as an escort at an upscale gentleman's club, a secret she'd maintained for nearly a decade to provide Harold with opportunities she never had. The morning sunlight filtered through the half-drawn blinds of their 12th-floor apartment, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. Felina stood at the kitchen counter, methodically preparing a nutrient-packed breakfast for Harold. Medical textbooks lay scattered across the dining table, evidence of his late-night study session. She glanced at her watch, 6:45 a.m. She had exactly 45 minutes to wake her son, serve breakfast, and leave for her supposed office job before her actual appointment with a regular client at the Hotel Magnifico. "Harold!" she called, her voice betraying none of the anxiety that constantly churned beneath her composed exterior. "Breakfast is ready. You have that biology exam today, remember?" A muffled groan emerged from behind her son's bedroom door, followed by the sound of shuffling feet. Harold appeared, his dark hair tousled, eyes still heavy with sleep, but bright with intelligence. At 19, he already carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone destined for success. Exactly what Felina had sacrificed everything to ensure. "Thanks, Mom," he mumbled, sliding onto a bar stool at the counter. He reached for the freshly squeezed orange juice she'd prepared. "You didn't have to get up this early just to make me breakfast?" Felina smiled, the gesture warming her tired eyes. "Of course I did. Today's important." She slid a plate of protein-rich food before him. "The exam that determines your placement in the advanced program deserves a proper breakfast, doesn't it?" Harold took a bite and nodded appreciatively. "This is great. Will you be home for dinner tonight? I thought maybe we could celebrate after the exam. I'm feeling pretty confident." A familiar pang of guilt struck Felina's heart. Thursday nights were her busiest at the club, the night when the wealthiest clients typically visited. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. There's a corporate event I have to oversee." "Very important clients," the lie slipped out with practiced ease. "But I promise we'll celebrate this weekend, anywhere you want to go." Harold's smile dimmed slightly but didn't disappear. He was used to his mother's demanding work schedule. "It's okay. Maybe I'll hang out with Miguel after the exam. His father owns that new restaurant on Avenida Ipiranga. He said we could eat there any time." Felina nodded, turning away to hide the flash of discomfort. Miguel's father, Paulo Dominguez, was one of Porto Alegre's most prominent businessmen, and had been at the club 2 weeks ago during a bachelor party. He hadn't recognized her thanks to the wig and stage makeup she wore during performances, but each new connection between Harold's world and her secret life was a potential catastrophe. "That sounds wonderful," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Just don't stay out too late. Even brilliant future doctors need sleep." Harold laughed and stood, gathering his books. "I should get going. Professor Torres said he'd be available for questions before the exam." He leaned over and kissed her cheek. "Love you, Mom. Thanks for everything." As the door closed behind him, Felina's shoulders sagged, the weight of her deception momentarily too heavy to bear. She allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of this vulnerability before straightening her spine and moving to her bedroom to prepare for the day's first performance. In her spacious closet, a luxury she'd insisted on when selecting the apartment, hung 2 distinct wardrobes. On the left, the conservative business attire of executive assistant Felina, tailored blazers, knee-length skirts and sensible heels. On the right, hidden behind a false panel, the costumes of Fiona, her persona at the gentleman's retreat. designer dresses cut low and high in all the appropriate places, stilettos that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and the selection of wigs that transformed her appearance. As she selected a charcoal grey suit for her morning charade, Felina caught her reflection in the full-length mirror. At 45, she remained strikingly beautiful, her exercise regimen and careful skincare routine maintaining the appearance expected in both her worlds. Light brown eyes, high cheekbones, and a graceful neck belied the weariness she felt in her soul. She'd been beautiful all her life, a mixed blessing that had opened doors but also made her a target since girlhood. She thought back to the day she'd made her choice, 9 years ago. Harold had been accepted to Porto Alegre's most prestigious private school, an opportunity that would set him on a path toward the medical career he dreamed of. The tuition had been impossible on her administrative assistant's salary. 3. Months of desperate attempts to secure loans or additional employment had failed. The day she'd received the final rejection letter from the scholarship committee, she'd also received an offer from Marcos, the owner of the Gentleman's Retreat. He'd noticed her when she'd applied for a hostess position and suggested a more lucrative role. The timing had seemed like either divine intervention or cruel cosmic irony. One night's work had paid 2 months of Harold's tuition. By the end of the year, she'd moved them from their cramped apartment in a dangerous neighborhood to this luxury building in one of Porto Alegre's safest areas. Harold never questioned their sudden financial improvement. She'd fabricated a story about a substantial promotion and stock options that had finally matured. A knock at the front door pulled Felina from her reverie. Frowning, she checked the time. Barely 7:30 a.m., too early for casual visitors. Through the peephole, she saw Sophia, her new neighbor from the apartment across the hall. They'd met only twice since Sophia moved in 3 weeks ago, but the woman had been surprisingly warm, inviting Felina for coffee despite her polite attempts to maintain distance. Felina opened the door, maintaining her professional smile. Sophia, "Good morning, this is quite early." The woman stood in a casual jogging outfit, her curly hair pulled back in a ponytail. At around 40, Sophia had a natural beauty that required little enhancement and carried herself with the confidence of someone comfortable in her own skin, something Felina both admired and envied. "I'm so sorry to disturb you," Sophia said, her voice carrying the slight lilt of Portugal's northern coast. "I've locked myself out like a complete fool, and the building manager won't be in until 9. I was wondering if I could use your phone to call my sister." "My mobile is of course inside with my keys." Felina hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. "Of course, come in. The landline is on the side table." Sophia entered, her eyes widening slightly as she took in the apartment. "This is lovely. You have wonderful taste." "Thank you," Felina replied, conscious of the time ticking away. Her first client, an aging corporate lawyer who preferred morning appointments before heading to his office, expected her at 9 a.m. Sophia made her call quickly, then turned to Felina with a grateful smile. "My sister will bring the spare key, but she can't be here until noon. I hate to impose further, but might I trouble you for a glass of water? I was halfway through my morning run when I realized I'd left my keys." Felina nodded and moved to the kitchen, hyper-aware of Sophia's curious gaze following her. Few neighbors had been inside her apartment. She kept interactions deliberately brief and impersonal to minimize the risk of questions she couldn't answer. "You have a beautiful view of the river," Sophia commented, accepting the water glass. "I'm on the other side facing the city. Both have their charms, I suppose." "Yes, Harold, my son, insisted on this unit specifically for the sunrise," Felina explained, unwittingly softening at the mention of her son. "He said it gives him extra study time in the mornings." Sophia smiled. "He sounds dedicated. What does he study?" "Medicine. He's in his first year at Federal University." Pride momentarily overrode Felina's caution. "He's always wanted to be a doctor since he was small." "And his father, is he also proud?" Sophia asked innocently. The question landed like a stone, in still water. "His father isn't in the picture," Felina answered, her tone cooling noticeably. "It's been just Harold and me since he was 3. Sophia's expression shifted to one of genuine regret. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry." Single parenthood isn't easy, I should know. I raised my daughter alone after her father decided fatherhood wasn't for him. This unexpected commonality momentarily cracked Felina's carefully constructed wall. It has its challenges, she admitted, but we've managed well enough. Sophia nodded, a look of understanding passing between them. More than well enough, I'd say. This apartment, your son in university, you should be proud of what you've accomplished. For a fleeting moment, Felina felt a dangerous urge to confide in this woman, to release the burden of her secrets to someone who might understand difficult choices made for a child's benefit. The impulse terrified her. No one could know. Not even a seemingly sympathetic neighbor. Glancing pointedly at her watch, Felina said, "I'm sorry, but I need to leave for work soon." Sophia took the hint gracefully. "Of course, I've taken enough of your time. Thank you for the phone and water." She moved toward the door but paused before exiting. "I'm hosting a small dinner next Friday for a few neighbors. Nothing fancy, just good food and conversation. You and your son would be welcome." "That's very kind, but my schedule is quite unpredictable," Felina replied with practiced regret. "Corporate events often come up last minute." "The invitation stands whenever you're free," Sophia said with a warm smile that suggested genuine interest in friendship, a rarity in Felina's carefully compartmentalized life. After Sophia left, Felina rushed to finish preparing for her day, the interaction having consumed precious minutes from her tight schedule. As she applied her makeup with practiced efficiency, she pondered the strange feeling the conversation had left her with, a mixture of longing and fear. How long had it been since she'd had a real friend? Someone who knew her, not the carefully crafted personas she presented to the world. 10 years at least. When Harold entered elite educational circles, she'd deliberately distanced herself from former friends who might accidentally reveal inconsistencies in her fabricated career. The mothers at Harold's school moved in social spheres far removed from hers, their charity luncheons and tennis matches scheduled during hours when Felina claimed to be in board meetings but was actually sleeping after late nights at the club. Loneliness was the price of Harold's opportunity. A fair trade, she'd always believed. Yet Sophia's simple kindness had momentarily illuminated the barren emotional landscape Felina navigated daily. Pushing these thoughts aside, she gathered her designer handbag, authentic, purchased with her first substantial earnings at the club, and headed for the door. In the elevator, she transformed, shoulders back, chin lifted, the confident stride of a successful professional woman. No one would suspect that the elegant woman in the tailored suit was heading not to a corporate office, but to a hotel rendezvous that would pay this month's maintenance fees. As the elevator doors opened to the marble-floored lobby, Felina nodded politely to the security guard and stepped out into the bright Porto Alegre morning, her mask firmly in place for another day of necessary deception. The autumn air carried a hint of the coming winter, though Porto Alegre's subtropical climate meant even cooler months remained relatively mild. Felina walked briskly toward the taxi stand, her heels clicking rhythmically against the pavement. She always took taxis rather than owning a car, another carefully calculated decision. Vehicles could be tracked, remembered. Anonymity was safer. As she settled into the back seat of the taxi, she gave the driver an address 3 blocks from the Hotel Magnifico. Never the actual destination, another security measure honed over years of vigilance. The driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, barely glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Just another businesswoman heading to work. Invisible in her visibility. Felina used the 20-minute ride to mentally transition from mother to performer. By the time she stepped out of the taxi, she'd fully inhabited her alternate persona. She walked the remaining blocks to the hotel, her stride lengthening, her hips swaying slightly more than they would have in her maternal identity. At the hotel's side entrance, reserved for discreet guest access, she nodded to the attendant who recognized her as a regular visitor, but was paid well by both the hotel and certain guests to maintain absolute discretion. In the elevator to the penthouse suite, she removed her jacket, unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of her blouse, and applied fresh lipstick in a shade darker than she would ever wear as Harold's mother. When the doors opened, she was fully transformed. into the woman her client expected, attentive, sophisticated, apparently delighted by his company. The day proceeded as so many had before. The morning appointment, a quick change in a public restroom of an upscale department store, lunch with another client who preferred the illusion of a business meeting in a fine restaurant, followed by an afternoon at her actual office, a small rented space in a commercial building where she maintained the fiction of her executive assistant position. Here, she caught up on administrative work for her real job, handled her finances, and received occasional calls that were forwarded from the club. By 6 o'clock, she was back at her apartment, changing once again, this time into the evening attire required at the gentleman's retreat. Thursday nights meant the black wig, the smoky eye makeup, the crimson dress with its strategic cutouts. As she prepared, her phone chimed with a message from Harold. Killed the exam. Celebrating with Miguel and some friends. Don't wait up, love you. Relief and pride washed through her. His hard work was paying off thanks to the opportunities her sacrifice provided. This validation steadied her as she applied the final touches to her disguise and prepared to face another night selling the illusion of desire and interest to men who could afford to buy it. The gentleman's retreat occupied the top 2 floors of what appeared from the outside to be a standard office building in Porto Alegre's business district. Its unmarked entrance was guarded by security personnel who admitted only known members and their approved guests. Inside, subdued lighting, plush furnishings, and attentive staff created an atmosphere of exclusive luxury. Not a typical strip club or brothel, the retreat catered to elite clientele, politicians, business leaders, celebrities, and the occasional foreign dignitary. Services ranged from simple companionship to private performances to more intimate arrangements, all conducted with extreme discretion and at substantial cost. Felina's role fell primarily into the first 2 categories. Occasionally, when finances demanded, she accepted the third type of arrangement, but only with established clients whose health and behavioral histories were thoroughly vetted by the club's management. Tonight, she was scheduled for companion services at the main bar, followed by a private performance for a group of executives celebrating a successful merger. As the elevator carried her to the club's entrance, Felina closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. When the doors opened, she stepped out as Fiona, confident, alluring, seemingly without a care beyond ensuring her client's pleasure in her company. No one looking at her would imagine the medical textbooks on her dining table or the nutritious meals she prepared each morning for her studious son. Fiona, darling, Marcos, the club's owner, approached as she entered. Impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, the 50-something former model kissed her cheeks in greeting. You're looking especially lovely tonight. Thank you, Marcos, she replied with the exact right mixture of warmth and professionalism. Is everything prepared for the Coastal Investments Group? Of course. They've requested you specifically after your performance last month for their CFO. His satisfied smile indicated the substantial fee attached to this request. They'll arrive at 9. Until then, Ricardo has asked for your company at the main bar. Ricardo Alvarez, a regular, client in his 60s, wealthy from family real estate holdings, generous with his money and respectful in his behavior. One of the easier assignments in Felina's rotation. The night unfolded predictably. Ricardo purchased expensive champagne and enjoyed showing Felina off to his associates. The private performance for the investment group went smoothly, with Felina and 2 other performers providing an artful display that walked the line between sensuality and explicit content. The executives tipped lavishly, their inhibitions loosened by alcohol and the heady atmosphere of success and exclusivity. It was nearing 2 in the morning when Felina, changing back into her street clothes in the performer's dressing room, heard a commotion in the hallway. Raised voices, unusual in the carefully controlled environment of the retreat, drew her attention. I don't care about your exclusivity rules. I'm here to see Paulo Dominguez. He's expecting me. The voice was young, insistent, and horrifyingly familiar. Felina froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. Harold, here at the club, impossible. Moving on instinct, she grabbed her black wig from the vanity and hastily secured it over her own hair, which she'd already removed from the elaborate updo of her performance. She cracked the dressing room door to see Harold arguing with Marco's security chief in the hallway that led to the private rooms. "Sir, without a membership or proper guest registration, I cannot confirm whether anyone by that name is on the premises," the security man was saying firmly. "I'll have to ask you to leave immediately. Just call him. Tell him it's Harold Neves. It's important. It's about his son. Paulo Dominguez, Miguel's father, here tonight, in one of the private rooms where the club's most exclusive services were provided. And Harold, her Harold, somehow at the club entrance trying to reach him." Felena stepped back, her mind racing. How had Harold discovered this place? Why was he looking for Miguel's father here, of all places? Did he know what sort of establishment this was? The door to the dressing room opened, and Lucia, one of the younger performers, slipped in. "There's some kid causing a scene out there," she whispered, eyes wide. "Security is about to remove him." "Where's Paulo Dominguez tonight?" Felena asked, her voice carefully controlled despite her internal panic. "Sapphire Room with the twins," Lucia replied, referring to a pair of performers who often worked as a duo. "Been there for hours." Felena nodded, her mind calculating rapidly. "I need to leave now. Is the service exit clear?" Lucia looked confused but nodded. "Should be. Is something wrong?" "No, just feeling unwell suddenly." Felena gathered her belongings with forced calm. "If Marcos asks, tell him I had a migraine." Calming on, moving quickly but deliberately to avoid attracting attention, Felena made her way to the service corridor that led to a separate elevator used for deliveries and staff. As the doors closed, she heard the unmistakable sound of a scuffle. Security removing Harold from the premises, she assumed. A strange mixture of relief and dread washed over her. He wouldn't see her here, but what had brought him to this place? What did he know? In the taxi heading home, Felena's mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Had someone recognized her? Had Paulo Dominguez mentioned seeing her here? That seemed unlikely. Men like Paulo protected their own reputations by maintaining discretion about such establishments. More likely, Harold had discovered something about Miguel's father that led him here, perhaps overheard a conversation, or seen a message on Miguel's phone. The question remained, did Harold know what kind of place the gentleman's retreat was? And if so, did he have any idea his mother worked there? The taxi dropped her 3 blocks from their building. Another safety measure that now seemed painfully inadequate. She walked quickly, constantly checking over her shoulder, terrified of encountering Harold before she could remove the last traces of her club persona. The apartment was dark when she entered. No sign of Harold. Either he was still out, or had gone directly to his room. Felena moved silently to her bedroom, removing the wig and washing away the heavy makeup with trembling hands. She changed into modest pajamas and a robe, arranged her hair into the simple style she typically wore at home, and removed all jewelry that didn't fit her maternal image. Only then did she call Harold's phone. It went straight to voicemail. She sent a text. "Hope you're having fun celebrating. Don't stay out too late. Love you." False normalcy. As if her world wasn't potentially collapsing around her. Sleep was impossible. Felena sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the door, jumping at every sound in the hallway. At 4:37 a.m. she heard a key in the lock. She quickly lay down on the sofa, arranging herself to appear as though she'd fallen asleep, waiting up. Harold entered quietly, clearly trying not to wake her. In the dim light filtering through the windows, she could see his disheveled appearance, hair mussed, shirt rumpled. He stood for a moment watching her sleep, then moved toward his bedroom. "Harold?" she murmured, feigning grogginess. "Is that you?" He stopped. "Yeah, Mum. Sorry I'm so late. You didn't have to wait up." She sat up, studying him carefully. His expression was troubled, but there was no accusation in his eyes, no indication that he'd made any connection between the club and her. "I wasn't waiting up," she lied. "I fell asleep watching that documentary about marine biology you recommended." She stretched, maintaining the illusion of interrupted sleep. "Did you have a good celebration?" Harold hesitated, then said, "It was fine. Miguel and I had dinner, then met some friends." He didn't mention visiting the gentleman's retreat or looking for Miguel's father there. Another secret between them, Felina realized, the irony almost unbearable. "You should get some sleep," she said gently. "You must be exhausted after that exam." He nodded, then surprised her by crossing to the sofa and giving her a fierce hug. "Love you, Mom, you know that, right?" The unexpected gesture and intensity of his words caught her off guard. "Of course I know. I love you too, more than anything." As he disappeared into his bedroom, Felina remained on the sofa, her heart pounding. Something had happened tonight, something that had prompted this unusual display of emotion from her increasingly independent son. Whether it was related to his appearance at the club remained unclear, but one thing was certain. The careful separation she'd maintained between her worlds was growing more precarious by the day. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. The next morning, Felina woke after barely 2 hours of fitful sleep. Harold had already left for his morning classes, leaving a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone. To campus. Meeting with Professor Torres about research opportunity. Back for dinner? Love, H." She stared at the paper, trying to decipher any hidden meaning, any indication that something had fundamentally changed between them. The note seemed normal, but Harold's behavior last night, the mysterious visit to the club, the emotional hug suggested otherwise. Felina's Friday schedule included only one afternoon appointment, a blessing given her exhaustion and anxiety. She used the morning to investigate, carefully checking Harold's room while he was out. Nothing seemed out of place. His laptop was password protected as usual, his desk organized with textbooks and notes. No obvious clues about what had drawn him to the gentleman's retreat. Her phone chimed with a message from Marcos. "Migraine better? Important client requesting you Saturday night, double fee." The double fee was Marcos's way of indicating that the client was either new and untested or had requested services beyond her usual boundaries. Either way, it would mean a substantial payment, enough to cover next semester's university expenses, with some left over for the emergency fund she maintained, in case her employment situation ever changed abruptly. Under normal circumstances, she would have accepted immediately. Today, with the specter of exposure looming, she hesitated. "We'll confirm by noon," she replied, buying herself time to assess the situation with Harold. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Checking the peephole, she saw Sophia standing in the hallway, holding a small basket. Felina considered ignoring the knock, but realized maintaining normal neighborly relations was important, especially now when any change in behavior might draw unwanted attention. "Good morning," she said, opening the door with a practiced smile that concealed her inner turmoil. Sophia beamed. "I hope I'm not disturbing you again. I wanted to thank you for your help yesterday." She extended the basket, which contained an assortment of pastries. "These are from my favorite bakery near the old cathedral, a small token of appreciation." "You didn't need to do that," Felina said, accepting the gift with genuine surprise. Small kindnesses were rare in her carefully constructed life. "I insist, neighbors should look out for each other," Sophia replied warmly. "Besides, I've been hoping for an excuse to get to know you better. As I mentioned, single mothers need to stick together." Her smile was open, infectious. "Any chance you're free for coffee this morning? I make an excellent espresso." Felina's instinct was to refuse. New connections meant new risks. But something about Sophia's straightforward kindness touched a lonely place she usually kept firmly buried. Besides, a friendly neighbor could provide cover and credibility for her executive assistant persona. "I have some time before I need to leave for work," Felina found herself saying. "Coffee would be lovely." Sophia's apartment, though identical in layout to Felina's, felt entirely different. Where Felina maintained a deliberately impersonal decor, elegant but nothing too distinctive or memorable, Sophia's space overflowed with personality. Colorful textiles, eclectic furniture, and walls covered with photographs and artwork created a warm, lived-in atmosphere. "Please sit," Sophia said, gesturing to a comfortable-looking sofa while she moved to the open kitchen. "Milk? Sugar?" "Black, please," Felena replied, studying the photographs on the nearby wall. Many showed a young woman at various ages, Sophia's daughter presumably, along with pictures of Sophia in various locations around the world. "I've traveled extensively," she observed. Sophia nodded as she prepared the coffee. "Part of my work as a cultural anthropologist, I spent most of my career documenting traditional practices in various communities before they disappear to modernization." She brought 2 cups of coffee to the sitting area. "I recently accepted a position at the university here. Less fieldwork, more teaching. At my age, the appeal of sleeping in actual beds rather than tents has grown considerably." "You teach at Federal University?" Felena asked, surprised at the coincidence. "That's where my son studies. Yes, though I'm in the social sciences, not medicine." Sophia settled into an armchair across from Felena. "It's a wonderful institution. Your son must be quite accomplished to have been accepted to their medical program." Pride momentarily overshadowed Felena's caution. "Harold has always been exceptional. Top of his class throughout school. Perfect entrance exam scores." She sipped her coffee, which was indeed excellent. "He's worked so hard for this opportunity." Sophia's expression softened. "And you've worked hard to provide it, I'm sure. Quality education isn't cheap, especially in medicine." No judgment colored her tone, only understanding. "My daughter's university years nearly bankrupted me, even with scholarships." "Where is your daughter now?" Felena asked, deliberately shifting attention away from her own financial situation. "London, working for a conservation organization." Sophia's eyes crinkled with evident pride. "She's focusing on marine ecosystems, something I know nothing about, but she's passionate about it." She leaned forward slightly. "That's the reward, isn't it? Seeing them find their path, even when it takes them far from us." The simple truth of this observation resonated deeply with Felena. For years she'd justified every compromise, every degradation, with the knowledge that Harold would eventually have opportunities beyond what she could imagine for herself. The price she paid daily was worth the future he would have, a future that would inevitably take him far from Porto Alegre, perhaps even from Brazil. "Yes," she agreed softly, "that's exactly the reward." "And for yourself?" Sophia asked gently. "What do you enjoy beyond your work and supporting Harold?" The question caught Felena off guard. No one had asked about her personal interests in years, perhaps because she'd made herself so unavailable to genuine connection. What did she enjoy? The compartmentalization of her life had become so complete that she struggled to identify anything that existed solely for her pleasure or fulfillment. "I read when I can," she finally said, grasping for something true that wouldn't reveal too much. "Mostly historical fiction. And I used to dance, ballet many years ago." Sophia's eyes lit up. "Really? Ballet requires such discipline and grace. Do you still practice at all?" Felena shook her head. "No, not for many years. Life became complicated." The admission felt strangely vulnerable, a small truth among so many necessary lies. "The community center where I volunteer has adult dance classes," Sophia mentioned casually. "Not ballet specifically, but various styles. Several women our age participate. It's quite liberating." The image of herself dancing freely, without performance or expectation, struck Felena as both appealing and impossible. Her body wasn't her own. It was a tool, an asset, a means to an end. The idea of reclaiming it for pure joy seemed as foreign as the distant countries in Sophia's photographs. "I don't have much free time," she said with practiced regret. "My position demands unusual hours." Sophia nodded, accepting this without question. "Of course, but the offer stands if your schedule ever allows it." She changed subjects smoothly. "Will Harold be joining you for the carnival celebrations next month? The university always has a fantastic parade entry." The mention of carnival, Porto Alegre's vibrant but smaller version of the famous Rio celebrations, brought a familiar tension. Public festivals meant crowds, photographs, potential recognition. Felena always created elaborate work excuses to avoid accompanying Harold to such events. "I doubt I'll attend," she said carefully. "As you can imagine, it's our busiest season in the corporate world. Many international clients visit Brazil specifically during Carnival." Sophia accepted this with a nod, though Felena thought she detected a flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps skepticism, in her new neighbor's observant eyes. Their conversation continued pleasantly for nearly an hour, touching on safe topics, like the neighborhood, the unusually warm autumn weather, and Sophia's travels. Throughout, Felena maintained her executive assistant persona while carefully deflecting personal questions. Yet despite her caution, she found herself genuinely enjoying Sophia's company, a rare experience that left her feeling both refreshed and unsettled as she finally excused herself to prepare for work. Back in her apartment, Felena checked her watch and messaging app. No word from Harold, and she had 3 hours before her appointment with an aging shipping magnate who preferred afternoon meetings at his private club. Enough time to visit the gentleman's retreat during daylight hours, when most clients were absent, to speak with Marcos about Harold's appearance last night. She changed into her business attire, applied her makeup with practiced efficiency, and headed out, the pleasant interlude with Sophia already receding as she refocused on the crisis at hand. The gentleman's retreat operated differently during the day. The main entertainment spaces remained closed, while the administrative offices on the lower floor handled the business aspects of the operation: scheduling, accounting, security arrangements, and vetting potential new members. Felena entered through the staff entrance, nodding to the daytime security guard who recognized her immediately, despite her executive assistant appearance. The separation between her identities was less rigid among club staff, who understood the necessity of discretion in their line of work. Marcos was in his office, reviewing financial reports when she entered after a brief knock. He looked up, surprise evident in his expression. "Felena, I wasn't expecting you today." He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Your message said you'd confirm about tomorrow night. Change of heart already?" She closed the door before speaking. "I need information about last night. The young man who was causing a disturbance, asking for Paulo Dominguez." Marcos's expression shifted to one of careful neutrality. "Ah, that situation. Security handled it appropriately. The young man was escorted out without incident or public attention." He studied her face carefully. "Why the interest?" Felena hesitated, calculating the risk of honesty against the danger of remaining uninformed. Marcos had always protected his employees. Their security meant his continued prosperity. But he was fundamentally a businessman who would prioritize the club's interests above all else. "He's my son," she said finally, watching Marcos's face for his reaction. His eyebrows rose slightly, the only indication of surprise from a man who prided himself on unflappability. "I see. That is unfortunate timing." "Did he say why he was looking for Dominguez? Did he mention me in any way?" Marcos shook his head. "According to security, he claimed it was about Dominguez's son, something urgent. He was quite insistent, but didn't mention anyone else." He leaned forward slightly. "Does he know about your employment here?" "No," Felena said firmly, "and he cannot find out, ever." "Agreed. That would be problematic for everyone involved." Marcos tapped his fingers thoughtfully on his desk. "Especially given Dominguez's position in the community," Marcos continued. "The man sits on 3 charity boards and makes substantial donations to the university. A scandal would be inconvenient." "Did Paulo see my son?" Felena asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "No." Security intercepted the young man in the entrance hall. Dominguez was otherwise engaged at the time. Marcos's euphemism referred to whatever private entertainment the businessman had purchased for the evening. Relief washed through Felena, though the fundamental problem remained. "I need to know what brought Harold here. If he suspects anything about me, I can have security review the footage, see if he spoke with anyone else," Marcos offered. "Though I must ask, will this affect your availability? The client requesting you tomorrow is particularly generous." The calculation was immediate and familiar: risk versus reward. The double fee would cover Harold's summer research program, but increased visibility meant increased danger of exposure. "I'll confirm by noon as promised," Felina said, rising to leave. "And Marcos, if Harold returns, or if anyone asks about—" "Mills? Complete denial," he assured her smoothly. "You've never worked here, we've never heard of you, standard protocol." As Felina left the club, her mind turned to the next immediate concern, discovering what had brought Harold to the gentleman's retreat without revealing her own connection to the establishment. Her afternoon appointment proceeded mechanically, her body on autopilot, while her mind remained fixated on her son. The wealthy client, more interested in having an attractive woman listen to his business complaints than in physical intimacy, barely noticed her distraction. By evening, she had returned to the apartment, having messaged Marcos her acceptance of the Saturday assignment. The additional money would strengthen her contingency fund, increasingly important if her carefully constructed life was beginning to unravel. Harold returned shortly after 7, carrying takeout containers from a popular restaurant near campus. "Brought dinner," he announced, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. "Professor Torres kept me late discussing this amazing research opportunity. I thought we could celebrate." Felina studied him carefully as she helped unpack the food. He seemed normal, excited about his studies, no sign of the previous night's disturbance. His eyes held no suspicion when they met hers, only the familiar warmth and enthusiasm. "Tell me about this opportunity," she said, arranging plates on the dining table. Harold launched into an animated explanation of a prestigious summer program, studying experimental treatments for degenerative diseases. Professor Torres had personally recommended him, despite his first-year status, a rare honor usually reserved for advanced students. "The only issue is the application fee and housing costs," he concluded, his excitement dimming slightly. "It's not covered by my scholarship, about 5,000 reais total." "That's wonderful news," Felina said, genuine pride mixing with secret relief. The Saturday double fee assignment would cover this expense perfectly, another sacrifice with tangible benefits for Harold's future. "Don't worry about the costs, we can manage it." Harold looked up, surprise evident in his expression. "Really? I know things have been tight lately with the apartment maintenance fees increasing." The observation startled her. She'd been careful to never suggest any financial concerns to Harold. "What makes you think things are tight?" He shrugged. "Focus," returning to his food. "Just noticed you haven't bought anything new for yourself in months, and you mentioned cutting back on the housekeeper's hours." His attentiveness was both touching and alarming. If he noticed these small details, what else might he observe? "The company is restructuring some departments," she improvised smoothly. "Nothing serious, but I've been more careful with expenses. Until everything settles. This program, however, is exactly the kind of opportunity we always save for." Harold nodded, accepting this explanation. "Thanks, Mum. I don't know what I'd do without you." The simple sincerity of his statement cut deep. What would he do without her? More importantly, what would he think of her if he knew the truth? The question haunted her as they finished dinner, Harold chattering about his classes, apparently having put the previous night's mysterious excursion behind him. Later, as they cleaned up together, Felina carefully broached the subject of his late return. "You must have had quite a celebration last night. I was surprised to see you come in so early this morning." Harold's movements faltered briefly as he loaded the dishwasher. "Yeah, it went later than expected." He hesitated, then added, "Actually, something weird happened. Miguel and I were at his father's restaurant, and Miguel got this strange text from his dad. He seemed really upset about it." Felina kept her expression neutral despite her racing heart. "Oh, what kind of text?" "He wouldn't show me exactly, but it was something about his parents' marriage. Miguel's mom has been in Europe visiting family for weeks, and apparently his dad hasn't been entirely faithful." Harold's voice lowered with disapproval. Miguel was devastated. He wanted to confront his father immediately. The pieces began falling into place in Felina's mind. "And did he?" Harold looked uncomfortable. "We tried. Someone told us his father was at some exclusive club. We went there, but they wouldn't let us in. Security practically threw us out." He shook his head. The whole thing was bizarre. Miguel was so angry he just went home after that. I tried to get a taxi, but it took forever that late. Relief flooded through Felina. Harold had been at the gentleman's retreat because of Miguel's family drama, not because of any suspicion about her. Moreover, he seemed to have no idea what kind of establishment it was, just some exclusive club where wealthy businessmen spent their evenings. That sounds like a difficult situation, she said carefully. Poor Miguel. How is he doing today? I haven't heard from him, Harold admitted. I sent a text but no response. I guess he needs time to process everything. Felina nodded sympathetically while inwardly calculating this new complication. If Miguel's mother returned and a divorce ensued, Paulo Dominguez might become a more frequent visitor to the gentleman's retreat, increasing the chances of some connection being made between Harold and herself. These things are complicated, she offered. Adult relationships sometimes. She trailed off, uncertain how to continue, without revealing too much worldly understanding. It's just disappointing, Harold said, his idealism showing through. Miguel always talked about how perfect his parents' marriage was. His father was supposed to be this great example of success in business and family. Felina touched her son's shoulder gently. People are rarely what they appear to be on the surface, Harold. Everyone has private struggles and makes compromises you can't see. As soon as the words left her mouth, she regretted them. Too close to a confession, too relevant to her own duplicity. Harold looked at her thoughtfully. I guess that's true. Still, there are some compromises people shouldn't make, right? Some. Lines that shouldn't be crossed. The question hung between them, weighted with unintended significance. Felina felt its gravity pulling at the foundations of her carefully constructed life. It's not always that simple, she said softly. Sometimes, the choices we face aren't between right and wrong, but between different kinds of wrong, different kinds of hurt. Harold's expression shifted to one of concern. Mom, is everything okay? You seem, I don't know, sad suddenly. Felina quickly manufactured a smile. Just tired, long week at work. She squeezed his shoulder. Don't worry about me, I'm so proud of you and this research opportunity. It's everything we've worked for. The "we" felt particularly heavy on her tongue. Harold had indeed worked hard, studying diligently, maintaining perfect grades, pursuing every academic advantage. But her work, the compromises and degradations she'd endured to make his achievements possible, remained invisible, as they must. I think I'll turn in early, she said, suddenly exhausted by the weight of her secrets. You should call Miguel. Tomorrow make sure he's all right. Harold nodded, still watching her with a hint of concern. Good night, Mom, love you. Love you too, she replied, the words entirely truthful amidst so many necessary lies. In her bedroom, Felina sat at her vanity, removing her makeup with deliberate care. The face that gradually emerged in the mirror looked tired, the fine lines around her eyes more pronounced than usual. At 45, she remained beautiful. Her appearance was her livelihood, after all, but tonight she could see the toll of the past decade clearly written in her expression. Her phone chimed with a message from Marcos. Security footage reviewed. Your son spoke only with front desk and security. No other contacts. Situation contained. A small mercy. She replied with a simple thank you and set the phone aside. As she prepared for bed, Felina's thoughts turned to Sophia's invitation to the community dance class. The idea seemed ridiculous given the precariousness of her current situation, yet something about it called to a part of herself she'd long ago suppressed, the woman who existed beyond her roles as mother and performer, who might take pleasure in movement for its own sake rather than for others' entertainment. Such indulgences were dangerous, she reminded herself. Every additional connection, every new routine or relationship increased the risk of exposure. Her carefully compartmentalized life had protected both Harold and herself for years. Now was not the time to introduce unnecessary complications. Still, as she drifted towards sleep, Felina found herself remembering the feel of dancing freely, before life's harsh realities had transformed her body into a commodity. The memory brought an unexpected ache of longing for the woman she might have been in a different life. one where desperate choices hadn't narrowed her existence to a series of calculated performances. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Another beautiful autumn day in Porto Alegre. Felena woke early, Harold's conversation about Miguel and his father still weighing on her mind. The situation presented both dangers and opportunities. If Paulo Dominguez's marriage dissolved publicly, his visits to establishments like the Gentleman's Retreat might diminish as he navigated the social fallout. On the other hand, scandal made people unpredictable, desperate. Paulo might recognize her connection to Harold and attempt to use that information for leverage. She needed more information, carefully gathered, of course, without revealing her own interests. Harold emerged from his room around 9, dressed casually in jeans and a university sweatshirt. "Morning," he mumbled, heading straight for the coffee machine. "Any plans today?" "Just some errands," Felena replied, deliberately vague as always, about her weekend activities. "And you? Have you heard from Miguel?" Harold shook his head, pouring himself coffee. "Not yet. Thought I might swing by his place if I don't hear from him soon. See if he's okay." Alarm bells rang in Felena's mind at the thought of Harold visiting the Dominguez household during this particular family crisis. "Maybe give him some space first," she suggested carefully. Family situations can be complicated. He might need time to process things before talking about it. Harold considered this as he added sugar to his coffee. "Maybe you're right, I'll text him again later." He hesitated, then added, "Actually, I was thinking of accepting Lucia's invitation to her parents' dinner party tonight. Her father knows. Professor Torres and might put in a good word about the research program. Lucia, the name was vaguely familiar from Harold's occasional mentions, a classmate, if Felena remembered correctly. That sounds like a good opportunity," she said, hiding her relief at this distraction from the Dominguez situation. "What time is the dinner?" 7, at their house in Moinhos de Vento. He sipped his coffee, watching her over the rim. "You could come too. Lucia said parents are welcome." The invitation caught Felena off guard. Harold rarely included her in his social activities. Understanding her work commitments made attendance difficult. More importantly, high society dinner parties in Porto Alegre's most exclusive neighborhood represented exactly the kind of environment she avoided. Too many potential connections to clients from the Gentleman's Retreat. "That's thoughtful of Lucia," she said carefully, "but I actually have a work event tonight, quarterly review dinner with the management team." The lie came easily, covering her evening appointment at the club with the double-fee client. Harold nodded, unsurprised by her refusal. "I figured. Just thought I'd offer." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Felena crossed to the entryway, checking the peephole to see Sophia standing in the hallway, dressed in casual weekend attire. "Good morning," Felena greeted her, opening the door with a polite smile. "What brings you by so early?" Sophia held up a flyer. "The community center is having an emergency blood drive today. They're short on O-negative donors, and I remembered you mentioning that's your blood type when we were discussing health insurance options." This was true, a detail Felena had shared during their coffee conversation. "I'm heading there now and thought you might want to join me." Before Felena could respond, Harold appeared behind her. "Mom, who's—" "Oh, hello." "Sophia Pereira," she introduced herself, extending a hand to Harold. "I moved in across the hall recently. Your mother has been very kind in helping me settle in." Harold shook her hand, his expression friendly but curious. "Harold Neves, nice to meet you." "Harold is studying medicine at Federal," Felena explained, a hint of pride creeping into her voice despite her discomfort at this collision of her carefully separated worlds. Sophia's face lit up. "Really? I just joined the anthropology faculty." "They're small world," she turned back to Felena. "About the blood drive, they're particularly desperate for O-negative. With your son's medical background, I'm sure he understands the importance." Put this way, with Harold listening, Felena found herself cornered. Donating blood was something Executive Assistant Felena would certainly do, civic-minded, responsible, setting a good example for her son. Yet it meant spending more time with Sophia, whose perceptiveness made her both appealing as a potential friend and dangerous as a potential witness to inconsistencies in Felina's carefully constructed identity. "I was planning some errands, but I suppose they can wait," she conceded, glancing at her watch. "Harold, will you be here when I return?" "Probably not. I need to head to the library, then get ready for that dinner." He turned to Sophia with the easy charm that made him popular among his peers. "It was nice to meet you, Professor Pereira. Sophia, please, we're neighbors," she smiled warmly. "And if you ever need anything at the university, my office is in the Humanities Building, 3rd floor." As Harold retreated to his room, Felina quickly gathered her purse and keys. "I just need a minute to change," she told Sophia. "I'll meet you in the hallway." Once alone, Felina quickly calculated the time requirements. The blood donation would take an hour, perhaps 2 with travel and waiting time. She still had plenty of margin before her evening appointment, provided nothing unexpected occurred. She changed into casual but elegant weekend wear, maintaining the appearance expected of a successful executive assistant, and rejoined Sophia in the hallway. "Your son seems lovely," Sophia commented as they walked toward the elevator. "Very polite." "Thank you," Felina replied, the praise warming her despite her guardedness. "He's a good young man, works very hard." "He has your eyes," Sophia observed. "Same thoughtful expression." The comment was innocent, but struck Felina unexpectedly. How long had it been since someone had noted a resemblance between her and Harold? In their isolated existence, with few people who knew them both, such observations were rare. It felt strangely validating, recognition of their connection beyond the secrets and necessary deceptions. The community center was busy when they arrived, the blood drive organized efficiently in the main gymnasium. Felina completed the screening questionnaire carefully, conscious of the need to maintain her executive assistant persona while providing accurate medical information. When asked about recent travel, a standard question on the donor form, she hesitated briefly before writing "local only," avoiding mention of a recent trip to São Paulo with a wealthy client. The donation process itself was quick and painless. As she sat afterward in the recovery area, sipping juice and eating the provided cookies, Felina found herself relaxing slightly in Sophia's company. Their conversation flowed easily from neighborhood topics to books they'd both enjoyed. Nothing too personal or probing. "I'm glad you came," Sophia said, finishing her juice. "They were really short on your blood type. You might have helped save someone today." The simple statement struck Felina deeply. When was the last time she'd done something unambiguously good? Something that helped rather than harmed, that built rather than degraded. Her entire existence revolved around Harold's welfare, yes, but the means she employed left little room for genuine contribution to the broader community. "It was nothing," she deflected, uncomfortable with both the praise and her emotional response to it. "It's never nothing to help others," Sophia replied with gentle conviction. "Even small actions matter." As they left the community center, Felina checked her watch. Nearly noon, with several hours before she needed to prepare for her evening appointment. The day stretched before her, unusually open. "I've taken enough of your Saturday," she said to Sophia as they approached the bus stop. "Actually, I was planning to visit the Riverside Market. They have that organic produce stand I mentioned." Sophia hesitated, then added, "You're welcome to join me if your errands can wait. The avocados are particularly good right now." The invitation was casual, friendly, without pressure. Felina knew the smart choice was to decline. Each additional minute spent with Sophia increased the risk of revealing inconsistencies in her carefully constructed persona. Yet something about this woman's straightforward kindness had begun to penetrate the walls Felina had built around herself over the years. "I haven't been to the Riverside Market in months," she found herself saying. "That sounds lovely." The market bustled with weekend shoppers, colorful stalls offering everything, from fresh produce to handcrafted goods. Felina and Sophia wandered among the displays, selecting fruits and vegetables, pausing occasionally to sample cheeses or preserves offered by enthusiastic vendors. The normality of the experience, two friends shopping on a Saturday afternoon, felt, both foreign and achingly familiar to Felina, a glimpse of the ordinary life she'd sacrificed years ago. "Oh, look at those," Sophia exclaimed, pointing to a stall selling handmade jewelry crafted from local stones and materials. She moved closer, examining a pair of earrings with evident appreciation. Felina followed, admiring the artisan's work. The pieces were beautiful but simple, nothing like the expensive accessories she wore as Fiona at the club, or the conservative jewelry appropriate for executive assistant Felina. "These are lovely," she commented, fingering a bracelet of polished river stones bound with leather cord. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "She uses materials from the region. That's riverbed agate. It's unique to this area." She selected a pair of earrings for herself, then gestured to the bracelet Felina had been examining. "That suits you. The colors complement your complexion." Felina shook her head, replacing the bracelet on the display. "I don't really wear jewelry outside of work. Professional settings, you know." It was a flimsy excuse. Most women had both work and casual accessories, but Sophia didn't press the issue, moving on to another stall featuring local honey products. As they continued through the market, Felina gradually relaxed into the simple pleasure of the outing. For these few hours, she could almost pretend she was simply a normal woman, enjoying a weekend without the weight of secrets and shame that normally accompanied her every movement. With Sophia, there were no performances required, no careful calculations of what each word or gesture might cost or gain her. The freedom was intoxicating and terrifying in its unfamiliarity. "There's a cafe at the end of the market with excellent empanadas," Sophia suggested as they finished their shopping. "We could have a late lunch before heading back." It's quite the powerful narrative hook to end this chapter here, leaving us wondering if Felina will continue deepening this genuine friendship or retreat back into her carefully controlled isolation. What new complications might this relationship bring to her precarious double life? The cafe was small but charming, with outdoor tables overlooking the river. They found a spot in the shade of a large umbrella, their shopping bags tucked beneath the table. A waiter brought menus and water, explaining the day's specials with practiced enthusiasm. "I recommend the cheese empanadas with chimichurri," Sophia said, scanning the menu. "They're wonderful." Felina nodded, accepting the suggestion. As the waiter left with their order, she glanced at her phone, a habitual check that had become second nature over years of carefully scheduled deceptions. No messages from Harold or Marcos, nothing requiring immediate attention. "Do you need to be somewhere?" Sophia asked, noticing the gesture. "No, just checking the time. Force of habit. From work." Felina set the phone aside, screen down on the table. "Corporate scheduling is relentless." Sophia smiled sympathetically. "I can imagine. The academic calendar has its own rhythms, but at least there are breaks between terms." She sipped her water. "How long have you been with your company?" The question was innocuous, but it touched on the elaborate fiction Felina had constructed about her professional life. "Almost 11 years now," she replied, the time frame accurate, though the occupation was not. "I started in basic administration and worked my way up." "That's impressive, especially while raising a son alone." Sophia's tone held genuine admiration. "It couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," Felina acknowledged, allowing a rare moment of honesty to surface. "There were times when I wasn't sure we'd make it. Harold was always brilliant, always deserved more than I thought I could provide." She stopped, surprised by her own candor. Sophia's eyes held understanding rather than judgment. "All parents feel that way sometimes. We want to give our children everything, but life has its limitations." She paused as the waiter delivered their empanadas, then continued once they were alone again. "My daughter's father left when she was 2. He decided family responsibilities interfered with his artistic expression." The slight edge in her voice suggested old wounds. "I was teaching part-time then, barely making ends meet. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I was failing her." The simple confession, offered without self-pity or dramatization, resonated deeply with Felina. How many nights had she done the same before making the choice that had defined the past decade of her life? "What did you do?" she asked quietly. Sophia smiled, a mixture of pride and remembered pain. "Whatever was necessary. Took extra teaching assignments. Wrote articles for academic journals that paid practically nothing but built my reputation. Cleaned houses on weekends when my daughter was with friends." She shrugged. "Not glamorous. but it kept us afloat until better opportunities came along. The parallels were striking, though Sophia could never know how closely her experience mirrored Felina's own desperate calculations, the difference being only in the specific measures each woman had taken to secure her child's future. Yet while Sophia could share her story openly, with dignity intact, Felina's choices remained shrouded in necessary secrecy and shame. "Your daughter is fortunate," Felina said softly, "to have a mother willing to sacrifice so much." "As is your son," Sophia replied, her gaze direct but kind. "Children don't always see the cost of their opportunities, not until they're much older, sometimes not until they have children of their own. But that doesn't diminish the value of what we give them." They ate their empanadas, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. The upcoming carnival celebrations, a new exhibition at the City Museum, Sophia's adjustment to Porto Alegre after years spent in various locations around the world. Throughout, Felina maintained her careful boundaries, sharing nothing that might contradict her established narrative, yet finding unexpected comfort in this simple social connection. As they prepared to leave, Sophia hesitated, then said, I meant to ask, my dinner invitation for Friday still stands. Nothing elaborate, just a few neighbors and colleagues. No pressure, but Harold would be welcome too." Felina's instinct was to refuse, as she had countless similar invitations over the years. Additional social connections meant additional risks, yet something about this afternoon, the simple normalcy of it, the brief escape from her divided existence, made her hesitate. "I'll check my calendar," she said, neither committing nor refusing outright. "Thank you for including us." They returned to their building in companionable silence, parting in the hallway with promises to repeat the outing. Back in her apartment, Felina found herself unexpectedly refreshed by the day's activities, a novel sensation in a life where every interaction was typically calculated for risk and reward. The apartment was empty, Harold presumably at the library, as mentioned. She unpacked her market purchases, then checked the time, nearly 4 o'clock, leaving adequate time to prepare for her evening appointment. As she showered and began the transformation into Fiona, Felina found herself considering Sophia's words about sacrifice and recognition. Would Harold ever truly understand what she had done to secure his opportunities? Could he possibly comprehend the calculations that had led her to the gentleman's retreat 9 years ago, the daily compromises that had followed? More importantly, would he forgive her if he knew? These questions had haunted her for years, but today they seemed particularly immediate, pressing. Perhaps it was Harold's newfound awareness of Paulo Dominguez's infidelities, his youthful indignation at moral compromises. Perhaps it was Sophia's simple kindness, offering connection without demanding confessions. By 6:30, Felina was fully transformed into her evening persona, elegant black dress that suggested wealth and sophistication while simultaneously providing easy access to her body, hair arranged in a style different enough from her daytime appearance to provide some disguise, makeup that enhanced her features while subtly altering their appearance. She checked her secure messaging app. The client would meet her at the Hotel Continental at 8, expecting champagne and conversation before more intimate services. The fee for this particular client would be substantial, enough to cover Harold's summer program with money left over for their emergency fund. The specifics of what would be expected in return remained vague, which typically indicated requests beyond the standard services. Felina had learned years ago to anticipate such situations with detached professionalism. Her body was a commodity, its use negotiable within certain firm boundaries. She left the apartment via the service elevator, another security measure, honed over years of careful practice, and took a taxi to a location several blocks from the hotel. The evening air was pleasantly cool against her skin as she walked the remaining distance, mentally preparing herself for the performance ahead. The hotel lobby gleamed with marble and crystal, the staff discreetly professional as she crossed to the elevator bank. The penthouse suite, accessible only with a special key card, would contain her client, a visiting businessman from São Paulo, according to Marcos's information. New clients always presented both opportunity and risk, potentially generous compensation balanced against unknown expectations and temperament. As the elevator ascended, Felina centered herself, clearing away thoughts of Harold, Sophia, and the brief normalcy of the afternoon. There was no place for such reflections in the hours ahead. The doors opened, revealing the luxurious penthouse foyer. She pressed the discreet button beside the main door, announcing her arrival. The man who greeted her was in his late 50s, expensively dressed, with the confident bearing of significant wealth and power. He introduced himself as Carlos, no surname offered, standard procedure in these arrangements, and invited her inside with practiced courtesy. "Champagne," he offered, gesturing to an ice bucket containing a premium vintage. "Marcos spoke very highly of your companionship." "Thank you," Felina replied, her voice modulated to the lower, slightly husky tone she used as Fiona. "I'd love some." The evening proceeded according to familiar patterns, drinks and seemingly casual conversation that was actually a careful negotiation of boundaries and expectations, followed by incrementally increasing physical contact. Carlos proved relatively straightforward in his desires: expensive champagne, ego-stroking conversation, and eventually physical release without excessive demands or complications. By midnight, the transaction was complete. Carlos, drowsy from alcohol and satisfaction, dismissed her with a generous additional tip beyond the arranged fee. Felina gathered her belongings, ensuring she left nothing behind, another security measure ingrained from years of practice. In the hotel bathroom, she partially reversed her transformation, removing the more obvious makeup, changing into the more conservative dress she'd packed for her return journey, adjusting her hair to a style closer to her daytime appearance. Never a complete reversal. That would wait for the privacy of her own bathroom, but enough to reduce the risk of recognition during her journey home. The taxi dropped her 3 blocks from Riverside Apartments. As she walked the remaining distance, Felina found her mind returning to the afternoon with Sophia, the simple pleasure of normal friendship contrasting sharply with the commercial intimacy she'd just concluded. The juxtaposition was jarring, a reminder of how completely she'd divided herself over the years. Have you ever hidden an important truth from someone you love to protect them? Or do you know someone who has kept a significant secret for what they believed was a good reason? Let me know in the comments. The apartment was dark when she entered, Harold presumably still at Lucia's family dinner, or perhaps returned and already asleep. Felina moved silently to her bathroom, completing the transformation back to herself, removing all makeup, showering away the scent of expensive cologne and sex, changing into modest pajamas that covered her completely. Only then, looking at her bare face in the mirror, did she allow herself to feel the weight of the evening. Not just the physical acts, which had become almost routine over years of practice, but the deeper cost to her sense of self. Each performance took something from her that could never be fully restored, leaving her hollowed out in ways that became increasingly difficult to ignore. A sound from the hallway caught her attention, Harold returning. She quickly dried her hair, arranged it in the simple style she wore at home, and emerged from her bedroom in her robe as if she'd been preparing for sleep. "Hey!" Harold greeted her, his expression bright with excitement. "How was your work dinner?" "Fine," she replied, studying him. He was dressed nicely, clearly having made an effort for the dinner party. "How was yours? Did you meet Lucia's parents?" Harold nodded enthusiastically. "Her father is amazing. He's the chief of surgery at São Rafael Hospital. We talked about the research program, and he said he'd speak to Professor Torres personally to support my application." The news was exactly what Felina had sacrificed for, connections and opportunities that would advance Harold's career. She should have felt vindicated, her evening's degradation justified by this result. Instead, she felt a strange emptiness, a question forming that she'd never allowed herself to consider before. Was there another way? Could she have secured Harold's future without sacrificing her dignity, her wholeness? "That's wonderful," she said, pushing the troubling thoughts aside. "I'm so proud of you. Thanks." Harold hesitated, then added, "Lucia's mother invited us both to their charity gala next month. It's this big fundraiser for the hospital's pediatric wing. Her exact words were, 'Do bring your mother. We'd love to meet her.'" Another social invitation, another potential danger zone, where Felina might encounter clients from her other life. Her immediate instinct was to refuse, but the hope in Harold's eyes gave her pause. He wanted to include her in this aspect of his life, wanted her to meet people who were important to him. "That sounds lovely," she said carefully. "When is it?" "Exactly? I'll need to check my work calendar." Harold's face brightened. "2 weeks from Saturday. I know you're busy, but it would mean a lot if you could come. Lucia's father could be really important for my future at the hospital." The calculation was immediate and familiar. Risk versus reward. The potential benefit to Harold's career against the danger of exposure in a high society setting where gentlemen's retreat clients might be present. "I'll do my best," she promised, uncommitted but not refusing outright. "Now tell me more about this dinner. What was Lucia's family like?" As Harold enthusiastically described the evening, the impressive home in Porto Alegre's most exclusive neighborhood, the influential guests, the clear wealth and connections of Lucia's family, Felina listened with a mixture of pride and apprehension. Her son was entering circles she had only accessed through her most demeaning work, yet his entrance was legitimate, earned through his intelligence and dedication. "Sounds like Lucia comes from an important family," she observed when he paused for breath. "They're old money. Her grandfather founded the hospital where her father works. Very traditional." Harold hesitated, then added, "They're pretty conservative, actually. Very focused on appearances and reputation." The warning bells in Felina's mind grew louder. Conservative, traditional families with concerns about reputation presented the greatest danger to her carefully constructed double life. If Harold became seriously involved with Lucia, the scrutiny would intensify. Background checks, family history investigations, the kinds of inquiries that might reveal inconsistencies in Felina's fabricated career. "And Lucia, is she important to you?" she asked carefully. Harold's slight blush answered before his words. "I like her. She's smart, dedicated to medicine for the right reasons." He looked down, suddenly shy. "She asked me to accompany her to her cousin's wedding next month, as her date officially. Another social event, another risk." Yet Felina couldn't bring herself to discourage this relationship that obviously brought her son happiness and might advance his career. This was, after all, what she'd sacrificed for. Harold's entry into a world of opportunity she could never have provided through legitimate means. "She sounds lovely," Felina said, forcing warmth into her voice despite her concerns. "I'm happy. For you." They talked a while longer before Harold retired to his room, leaving Felina alone with her thoughts. The evening had brought both triumph and complication. The financial means to secure Harold's summer program balanced against his deepening connection to a family whose social circle might easily overlap with her clients. As she finally settled into bed, Felina's mind returned to Sophia, the simple friendship offered without judgment or expectation, the parallel experiences they'd shared as single mothers. For the first time in years, Felina found herself longing for honest connection, for a relationship uncomplicated by deception or commercial transaction. The thought frightened her with its potential to disrupt the careful separation she'd maintained between her worlds. Yet it persisted, a small flame of possibility in the darkness of her carefully compartmentalized existence. Perhaps after all this time, she might allow herself one genuine connection beyond her relationship with Harold, one person who might see her, not the carefully crafted personas she presented to the world. Sleep came slowly, troubled by dreams, of exposure and loss alternating with visions of a simpler life where friendship and honesty were not luxuries beyond her reach. Felina lay awake long after midnight, the weight of the night's performances and the day's hidden revelations pressing in on her. In the quiet darkness of her bedroom, her thoughts raced with memories of every sacrifice she had made. Each choice, each secret she'd guarded to provide Harold with the opportunities she had never had, seemed to echo in the silence. As the gentle patter of rain began against the window pane, she resolved that the path she trod could not remain unchanged. Somewhere between the carefully partitioned identities of executive assistant Felina and Fiona, she felt an undeniable pull toward reclaiming parts of herself lost in the service of duty and desperation. Morning arrived with an understated grey light that seeped through the drawn curtains. Felina rose and moved through her routine with an efficiency born of years of practiced separation. Yet, as she fixed her hair in the mirror, the reflection seemed to whisper of a life that could be different, one in which she was more than a provider who traded pieces of her soul for Harold's future. Today, she decided, would be different. Today, she would begin to consider that perhaps she could find dignity and connection in a way that did not require endless sacrifice. After a sparse breakfast and a hurried goodbye to Harold, who left for classes with his usual determination, Felina stepped out into the brisk morning. Instead of heading straight to her appointment, she made a detour on foot toward a small park a few blocks from her apartment. The park, filled with ancient trees and winding paths, always reminded her of a simpler time when dreams had not yet been burdened by the cost of survival. Sitting on a worn stone bench, she allowed herself a few moments of unguarded reflection. In that quiet, she acknowledged the duality of her existence, a woman adored by her son, yet forced to live a lie, a devoted mother and a performer selling an illusion. The internal conflict was profound, but it also held the promise of transformation. Her thoughts were interrupted by a gentle voice. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" Turning, Felina saw an elderly woman with kind eyes and a soft smile. Over the next half hour, they talked about the changing seasons, the slow revival of nature after a long winter, and the simple joys of daily life. The conversation was free of any pretense or hidden agendas, a genuine human connection. In that exchange, Felina recognized something she had long denied herself, the possibility of embracing vulnerability without risking everything. When the woman departed, Felina felt lighter, a seed of hope planted in her heart. Returning home, Felina found the apartment quiet. Harold's absence allowed her the space to confront her thoughts. That day, she sat at her small dining table and opened her worn journal, the one she had not used in years, and began to write. With careful, unsteady strokes, she recorded her feelings, the guilt that accompanied each lie, the constant fear of exposure, and the deep longing to be seen for who she truly was. The act of writing was cathartic, a silent promise to herself that she would someday find a way to reconcile her dual lives. That afternoon, Felina received a call from Sophia. The warm, familiar tone on the other end of the line offered her an invitation to join a small gathering at the community center later that week, a casual meet-up with a few neighbors and friends from different walks of life. Sophia's voice was insistent yet gentle. "I know your schedule is busy, Felina, but sometimes it's important to take a break and just be yourself." Felina hesitated, glancing at her calendar filled with appointments and clandestine engagements, but something in Sophia's earnestness made her agree. "I'll be there," she said softly, surprising even herself. In the days that followed, Felina began to reclaim small pieces of her life that had been sidelined. She spent her mornings donating blood at the community center and her afternoons browsing the market with Sophia. Each experience, each genuine moment of connection chipped away at the long-held belief that she must hide every aspect of herself to protect Harold's future. Yet the fear remained, a persistent, shadowy reminder that her secret, if revealed, could shatter the carefully constructed world she had built. That fear was put to the test when Harold unexpectedly returned home one early evening from his dinner party. His eyes, normally alight with youthful confidence, held a flicker of uncertainty. "Mom," he began hesitantly, "can we talk for a minute?" Felina's heart hammered in her chest as she nodded, ushering him into the living room. Sitting side by side on the faded sofa, Harold's gaze fixed on a spot far beyond the room's soft lighting. "I know something's off," he said in a low voice. "I've noticed you're not the same lately. You seem distant, and sometimes I catch you looking at me as if you're waiting for something." His words were careful, but laden with a concern that pierced Felina's carefully held composure. For a long moment, silence reigned between them. Finally, Felina sighed, searching for words that could both protect him and offer some truth. "Harold, life has a way of making us wear masks. Sometimes we do things that hurt ourselves so that the people we love can have a better chance at a good life. Her voice trembled as she spoke, a confession not of specifics, but of the pain behind her choices. Harold frowned slightly, his eyes searching hers. "I just worry, Mom. I worry that you're giving up parts of yourself that you deserve to enjoy. You deserve happiness, not just sacrifices." His tone was gentle, not accusatory. In that moment, Felina realized that the distance he sensed was not born of judgment, but of love, a love that wanted to see her whole and happy. That night, as Harold slept peacefully in his room, Felina lay awake with a tumult of emotions. His words echoed in her mind, stirring a desire to embrace the parts of herself she had long buried. The next morning, she made a decision. There would be no sudden confessions, no reckless revelations. Instead, she would begin to live more honestly, starting with small steps. She resolved to attend Sophia's gathering, to explore the possibility of reconnecting with a community beyond the rigid constraints of her double life. Saturday arrived, and Felina found herself standing at the entrance of the community center, her heart pounding with anticipation and trepidation. The space was warm and welcoming, filled with people engaged in simple, heartfelt conversation. She spotted Sophia immediately, radiant, genuine, and unburdened by pretense. As Sophia greeted her with a warm embrace, Felina felt an unfamiliar sense of belonging. Throughout the afternoon, she listened to neighbors sharing stories of personal triumphs and struggles. One man spoke of overcoming addiction, another recounted the loss of a loved one and the slow journey toward healing. Their honesty was raw and unvarnished, a stark contrast to the artifice that Felina had long maintained. And as she listened, she began to understand that true strength lay not in hiding one's scars, but in sharing them with those who cared. That evening, as Felina returned home, she looked at herself in the mirror. The reflection that met her was still one of an elegant, capable woman, but now there was a new glimmer in her eyes, a spark of self-acceptance and a cautious hope for change. She thought about the choices she had made, the sacrifices she had endured, and the possibility of a future where she could be both the devoted mother Harold needed and a woman who honored her own worth. In the following weeks, Felina carefully navigated her life with a renewed sense of purpose. At work, she maintained her professional facade as the executive assistant, but in quiet moments, she allowed herself to daydream about a life where her two worlds might blend seamlessly. At the gentleman's retreat, she continued to perform her role, but the encounters began to feel less like transactions and more like fleeting moments in a larger, more complex tapestry of life. Each smile she offered, every polite farewell, was tinged with a secret determination. One day the masks would come off completely. Harold, too, seemed to sense the change. Their conversations grew deeper, touching on dreams and the sometimes painful realities of growing up. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony overlooking the quiet streets of Porto Alegre, Harold said, "Mom, I want you to be happy too. I know you've done everything for me, but I'd like to see you smile more. Really smile, not just out of obligation." His earnest words, spoken in the soft glow of twilight, filled Felina with both gratitude and resolve. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, and the ever-present risk of exposure. Yet Felina recognized that the truth, however painful, was a necessary step toward healing. The transformation would not be instantaneous, nor would it be without setbacks. But in that quiet evening, under the vast, starry sky, she felt ready to take the first tentative steps toward a life where she could be fully herself, where her love for Harold did not have to come at the cost of her own dignity. In time, Felina would continue to weave together the threads of her double life into a more authentic tapestry. She would face difficult conversations and navigate the judgments of those who clung to appearances, but she would also embrace moments of genuine connection at the community center with Sophia and in the warm, unguarded laughter shared with Harold. And though the secret that had defined her existence for so long still loomed large, Felina now believed that even the darkest truths could be transformed into a beacon of hope. As the days turned into weeks, Felina found that her inner strength blossomed. Each new sunrise brought with it a promise that the sacrifices of the past could give way to a future where resilience and honesty reigned. And in that future, both, she and Harold might finally learn to live not in the shadows of secrets, but in the radiant light of truth and self-acceptance. Congratulations! Type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel,